Taking that forward, today Swaraj Abhiyan, the non-profit organization which has filed a PIL seeking the Supreme Court intervention to ensure adequate relief for drought-affected regions, has told the court that the government's drought figures were grossly underestimated. Remember, last week the government had told the Supreme Court that 33 crore people were affected by drought in India. Swaraj Abhiyan has said that a realistic assessment would show that not 33 crore but 54 crore people have been hit by the drought. What's more, the Supreme Court also quizzed the government on its disaster management plan. The government's answer: there's no plan in place yet. This comes as a shock considering that the government itself had conceded last week that 256 Indian districts were drought hit. To discuss this further, we're now joined by Narendra, Taneja, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Representing the Congress is the spokesperson Khushbu Sundar. Also with us, Nitin Sethi, columnist at the Business Standard. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Mr. Taneja, if I can start by asking you, I mean, the fact that India has had poor monsoons is no secret. This is the government of this country telling the Supreme Court that no national disaster management plan is in place. They're in the process of putting a plan together. The disaster management plan will be approved by the 30th of May. No disaster mitigation funds are available with the centre and the state. I mean, what exactly is going on? You know, 10 states have given data. Some states like Gujarat haven't even shared data with the apex court. And this is the government's response on how it's tackling the drought situation.
Well, the government response is, as you can see, the amount of money which has been only released, and 24/7 contact with various states, especially those affected districts. That's going on. And whatever, at the same time, government has incentivized irrigation, incentivize relief, and incentivize whatever schemes, for instance, schemes are there, so that whatever the central government can do, that is available to every single person, every single farmer, every single family. But when it comes to the disaster management plan, as you understand
Taneja,
these things,
Mr.
you are a
Taneja,
business channel, these things,
yes, go ahead, sir.
You know, these things take these things take a little time. I mean, the government is putting that in place, and once that is put in place, this would be conveyed to the nation. As you can understand, India is historically prone to drought. And the government that, the party which has been in power since independence, they neglected irrigation. They neglected,
No, Mr. Taneja, just a second, sir. Just a second, sir. The criticism of your government, sir, if I may ask you a question, is the fact that you have refused to acknowledge the crisis that this country is facing, especially in rural India. You've refused to acknowledge the agrarian crisis, and yet even today you're saying that you don't have a plan in place, and it will take you to the 30th of May to be able to put that plan in place.
No. On the contrary, in fact, government has been in touch with all governments, the state governments, and at the same time, the moment the government got the picture, we started acting before the state governments could even act. And the action plan was put in place. You talked about a particular program, a specific program like the disaster management, and I'm responding only to that. Otherwise, as you can see, if you allow me time, I will come out with data and figures, whatever you want. I've got everything with me here. But you see, this is the disaster management plan, the same way as we have disaster management plan for other calamities. I was referring to that, and you are also probably referring to that.
Okay.
But in terms of relief to the people, that is going on 24/7.
All right, Khushbu Sundar, let me come to you. And, it's unfortunate that politicians continue to play politics. Mr. Taneja alluding to the fact that the Congress, in its time, didn't do enough, and perhaps there is truth to that as well. But is it time now for politicians to be held accountable for the fact that year after year, this is the same situation that we're faced with?
It's very unfortunate to see Mr. Taneja coming up with these kind of allegations where they have been seen it, and we have seen, the world has been seeing as to how the UPA government had performed when they were in power till 2014 and 15. When you look at the agriculture growth, that itself was 3.7%, and today when you look at it, it is just 0.2%. So you see the downfall. And let me tell you, yes, there has been a severe drought, agrarian and water crisis in this country. It's not only about the irrigation, it's to how you have been helping the drought hit people. It took Supreme Court, the apex court, to whack them them and to remind them that it's your duty to provide them with all the
Ms. Sundar,
facilities. And what I do not understand is this drought.
That's shrugging, again, as I pointed out, that's shrugging the blame from one political corner to another political corner. The Congress didn't do any better. The Congress didn't do better in states that have been most drought-prone. We've seen what's happening in Latur, in Marathwada, in Vidarbha. So let's not play politics, Ms. Sundar. I'm asking you for specifics on how politicians of this country can rise above petty politics and be accountable to people for what is a dire situation.
Politics, you cannot. We cannot play politics with the farmers. We cannot play politics with the agrarian problem. We cannot play politics with the water crisis. We cannot play politics with the lives of the farmers who are the annadatas of a country. This is the problem which has the Modi government has completely overseen it, overlooked. This is what we were forcing. Already the meteorological department and the people, the activists, everybody have been telling them, they have been forcing it, they have been seeing it coming. Why is it the government was not prepared? Why is it that it's not been declared a national calamity as yet? There are more than 13 states which have been saying that they are drought hit. There is almost 50% of the 6 lakhs villages we have today, almost 50% which is hit so badly, severely hit by the drought. And I do not understand. They say they still do not have a plan for that. That is what is very, very alarming. Okay. What happened to the Raj Dharma? That is what is very alarming today.
Nitin Sethi, let me bring you in this conversation. There is some truth to what Khushbu Sundar is pointing out, and as the petition that's been filed in the Supreme Court, of course, Swaraj Abhiyan also claiming that the government is understating, and there's a problem at the end of the state governments as well, because even state governments seem to be reluctant to declare drought. But Nitin Sethi, what do you believe is at the heart of this mess at this point in time, and what needs to be done in your assessment in terms of practical solutions?
I think at the heart is really callous politics, and perhaps this government has been slightly more callous than the previous one in responding to this issue, but that comes from a structural problem that this government faces in understanding how to operate in a federal entity. After the 14th Finance Commission, it ideologically believed that its role in the states is very limited. The social sector shall be taken care of by the states itself. But as it's increasingly realized, as we see in Manrega and in other schemes, that the centre needs to play a hand-holding game as well. Now, that I think has caused a problem this year, particularly in a drought where the centre sat back. The states didn't act appropriately either. It's taken a long while for the centre to step in and say, yes, let's do something together. Now, at the states level, clearly, I think they are facing one of the worst crises in a decade, simply because this drought is coming on the back of 2 really bad years. It's come early. The fact is it's going to get worse in the coming years, considering climate change will cause more variation. There's no way to tell whether this one's particularly caused by climate change or not, but it will get exacerbated with time. Now, in the short run, easily provisions of water, provision of for livestock should have been done far faster. Now, to me personally, the Supreme Court's intervention, I don't think will end up doing much. Practically, if you see the courts are unable to handle things which are based on processes, they can easily deal with events. Now, it might have brought everything to our attention, but frankly, at the state level and at the central government level, they do need to provide water faster. They could have done with ensuring that the existing water links were reworked, revamped in the last 3 months. I think the national disaster plan not existing really will not make a difference one way or the other. It's unfortunate that a process like a drought is not seen as a disaster per se. A disaster in our psyche is usually seen as an event that takes place over 3 days. So that's been a structural problem with us.
Well, that is the unfortunate reality. But Mr. Taneja, you were talking about throwing data away, but let me ask you this, and this is the point that Nitin was also bringing about. You know, whether it's the funds as far as the NREGS is concerned, which again, by the way, the Supreme Court had to force the central government into disbursal of the NREGS funds. What can we expect now in terms of faster implementation? The unfortunate story that we just played out from Telangana, where somebody is part of the NREGS scheme, but the money is not being credited into his bank account. What can we do to ensure that both the centre and the state governments work in tandem to ensure that the situation on the ground is dealt with much more smoothly and efficiently and proactively?
Well, you've asked me big questions, so allow me a little time. You see, before we came to power, 67% of the people didn't even have the bank account. And with Janadhan Yojana, all these people have got back account, which means that we have got a platform in place. technology. We are using technology for that. And that's precisely what we're doing, so that the money under Manrega and various schemes, can be transferred in the accounts of the affected farmers immediately, practically almost instantly. That's being done across the country. Wherever there are some hitches and glitches and all that, we are in touch with the central government and even district authority to find a solution. You see, we are not interested in politics of this. What we want to do, there are people, and we just want to take the relief from, wherever we can mobilize, whether it's by train or it's by some other sources, so make it available to the people. While doing this, at the same time, there are structural problems, there is no doubt about it, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but the fact remains 40% of our farmers still don't have access to irrigation infrastructure. We are putting that in place. Number two, every single village across the country used to have these traditional, water ponds. They disappear. We are bringing them back and investing 60,000 crores, these kind of schemes.
Yes.
So there are a number of, if you allow me, I can go on with that. You see, anybody who knows a little bit of agriculture would agree.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Unfortunately, we're out of time, Mr. Taneja. I'm going to give Khushbu Sundar the final word. Khushbu Sundar, this matter was brought up in Parliament today, but our understanding is that perhaps it will be forgotten, because we're now going to see both the government and the Congress slugging it out over all kinds of different scams, the BJP's scams and the Congress's scams. So is the drought going to be forgotten starting tomorrow in Parliament?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Drought will definitely be spoken in the Parliament. Congress is definitely going to speak up. Congress is definitely going to take it forward. And let me remind you, the BJP government, when they're talking about Manrega, let me remind them the Narendra scheme was brought in by the UPA government. And let me also remind them that the 12,230 crores of arrears of 2015 and 16 was given only in 2016 April. So it's no point you're opening as many accounts as you want for the farmers. What is important, whether money has been sent to them at the right time or not. So when 12,230 or 2,260 crore is given to them a year later, how do you expect a farmer to work or repay back what he owns the government or the banks?
All right.
That is what is very, very important.
Mr. Taneja and Nitin, I'm afraid I would have liked to continue with this conversation, but we're right out of time. We just hope that the central government as well as the state governments act together to address what is a crisis facing India at this point in time. Thank you very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. It's time now.